A civil rights icon slaps Donald Trump. Guess how Trump responded? Did the president-elect do the right thing, or does he still have a lot to learn? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Well, Representative John Lewis marched in Selma with the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. His status as a civil rights icon comes up anytime he does anything newsworthy. This past week on national TV, Congressman Lewis said that the election of Donald Trump was not legitimate due to the alleged interference by Russia on Trump's behalf. Trump responded in his trademark style with several tweets criticizing Lewis and his congressional district, which Trump claimed was, quote, in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime-infested, end quote. The news media immediately began promoting the Trump-Lewis bout like a prize fight. Now, men, the fact that Lewis is black and a civil rights icon, along with proximity to the Martin Luther King holiday, led to immediate accusations of racism against the president-elect. Fact checkers pointed out Lewis's district does have higher than average crime and unemployment, but it's hardly horrible, falling apart, or crime-infested. And Trump soon broadened his attack to go after Democrat policies, which have harmed inner cities, making it a little less personal. Now, Stephen Green, Representative Lewis is just one of 435 members of the House and therefore not empowered to fix the problems of his district. In fact, conservatives don't want Congress to fix particular local situations, which is the proper role of state and local governance in a federal republic. So even if you think Trump was right in smacking down Lewis, could he have done it better?
Well, let's attack the heart of this problem, which is why is Lewis a congressman to begin with? And, he did one great thing 50 years ago. The civil rights movement was a good thing, a necessary thing, a noble cause, and I'm glad the right side of history won, which it doesn't always do, unfortunately. But since then, he's been kind of the high school quarterback who that was his glory day way back in high school, and he hasn't really done anything for himself or his community since. We were talking about gerrymandering being the Democrats' next big bugaboo after the Russians hacking the elections and all that. And the Republicans have gerrymandered themselves into power. Well, number one, you can't gerrymander yourself into power unless you achieve power first. So these Republicans were popularly elected, and now, of course, they're using gerrymander to help protect that, just like Democrats do. But what is left unsaid is that Democrats love gerrymandering when it creates these majority-minority districts like the 5th in Georgia, which does nothing to help these districts. What it does do, though, is create permanent positions for the most radical members of the Democratic Party who have basically lifetime appointments to these seats. And if you could make these seats competitive, then instead of aging almost radicals like this, you would have competitive, moderate Democrats who would actually be looking after the interests of their constituents instead of serving as poster boys and girls of color for left-wing causes.
Well, Bill Whittle, with Martin Luther King Day just around the corner at the time this happened, and with Representative Lewis languishing in the Democratic minority in, let's call it, the November of his years, wouldn't the better part of valor been for Trump to overlook the insult and let it pass? And if not, how would President-elect Whittle have handled the situation?
There's a lot there. We saw what happened when we had a president who let it pass with George Bush, and they began to tell lies about him, and the lies got bigger, and they kept repeating them. He didn't deign to answer any of them, and they became known as the absolute rock-solid truth in history. So just the fact that somebody's fighting back makes me happy. I think, Scotty, for me, this whole thing with Donald Trump and tweeting is, I find it unseemly, but it's also an end run around this media. You want to talk about the Russians helping Donald Trump? It's nothing compared to what the mainstream media has done for Democrats and Hillary. So, as you know, Scotty, I feel like I must be in the same position as Americans were 100 years ago, maybe a little more, when presidential candidates decided that they would actually campaign, because for the first 100 years of this country or so, you didn't campaign for president. You would just simply retire to your lovely estate and wait for the grateful nation to call you. So when people started actually campaigning back then, I'm sure they thought it was unseemly too. Yeah. Look, it's the new world, and this is who we've got. And one of the reasons we've got this guy is because of his ability to fight back.
Well, political fighting has a vicarious effect similar to that of sports. Just as Trump's fighting spirit makes his followers feel triumphant, so the insult to Representative Lewis landed not just on the congressman, but on his supporters, and in a broader sense on Black Americans in general, even though Trump implied no racism. Now, the president-elect can ignore that perception is reality, but he'd miss a great opportunity. I mean, imagine if Mr. Trump had greeted Representative Lewis's remarks with grace and invited him to the White House for a visit. Better yet, what if Trump invited Lewis to meet him in one of the worst neighborhoods in Atlanta, to walk about a bit, and then to sit down for a Coke at a local diner and ask Lewis about his experiences in the civil rights movement? Well, the president-elect doesn't have to promise anything or do anything for Lewis. Just be there and listen. Treat him with the dignity due to his office. Overlooking the offense and seizing the opportunity to build a bridge would demonstrate that Trump's the bigger man and that he truly is going to be president of all Americans. No, John Lewis did not earn this kind of treatment with his obnoxious partisanship, and Donald Trump doesn't owe him anything. But when the congressman shot his mouth off, a lot of ears perked up to see what would happen next. Here's hoping that President Trump seizes the next opportunity to reach past the characters in Washington and to connect with a new audience by showing a little respect. Just a little bit. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.